Good afternoon. This is the Devar Torah on Parashat Re'eh. It's the fourth parsha in Sefer Devarim, the last sefer of the Chumash by books of Moses, which will conclude on Simchas Torah, which this year comes out on Shabbat. The parsha begins with the following pasuk: Re'eh Anochi Noten Lefenechem Hayom Bracha B'Klal Ela. You see before me there in place with you both the blessing and the curse. The parsha then goes on to discuss a number of pesukim, the blessing and the curse that are going to be given once they cross the Jordan, 6 on one hill and 6 on the other hill. And it says, when you get into the Eretz Israel, Eretz Canaan, you must destroy all of the idols and high places of the nations that they're being forced out. And it says that you will have a place where you will bring the sacrifices. It said once again against Avodah Zorah. Also talks about the laws of kashrut and how you're going to, when your borders expand. It's also warning against serving Hashem with idolatrous practices, idolatrous prophet, and missionaries. What happens if you hold an entire city that rebels? There's a whole discussion of whether this actually happened or not. There's two opinions more on that. And then it goes, say you should not do a sign of mourning. You shall, and it also goes into laws of kashrut, what animals you can eat, and fish and other creatures. It talks about bringing tithe to Hashem. And then you, on the third, you give offerings to the poor people, Levium, converts. Then it talks about Shemitah. On the seventh year, you let the land lie fallow, and all debts are canceled. And you should still go to that. We also talk about the Jewish slave, firstborn animals, the three yantas, and how we have to come before Hashem for each one of those. Now, it's very interesting that this parsha always comes out either just before or at the time of Rosh Chodesh Elul. Now, to fully understand the impact of that, we have to look at the time of year. Now, we all know that Av started as a tragic month, culminating in the worst day of the year, Tisha B'Av. However, by the 15th of Av, Tu B'Av, things have started transforming. There were a number of miracles performed by Hashem on that day for us, and we're moving in a totally different direction. We've also started by then the 7 Haftorahs of consolation for the tragedies we suffered from. That starts with Parshas Vayikanon, and we'll end before Rosh Hashanah. In any event, what is the significance of this period that this parsha should come out at this time? And if you look, as broadly explained by the Bnei Yissaschar, among others, Tu B'Av is the beginning of a period, 40-day period. Now, it is known that before 40 days before a child gets conceived, uh, it will announce that Ploni ben Ploni will marry Plonit bat Plonit. This, in other words, this child will marry this child. The husband and wife are announced. And so what kind of conception is announced here? What kind of, here we're talking about something different. We're talking about a spiritual one. This is announcing the heavenly voice that Hashem will effectively have a marriage, not a physical marriage, obviously. But in other words, and who is the bride going to be? Knesset Israel. So in those 40 days, we're building up to the conception of the universe, which happens on the 25th of Elul, with Rosh Hashanah being the 7th. According to the other opinion, it would be going from Tu B'Shvat, ending on the 25th day of Adar, non-leap years anyway, and then going on to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is Rosh Hashanah and spiritual things. In any event, so this is why we have it at this time of year. We're beginning a very important process of tshuva, which should have started in the 3 weeks. And then we develop, and then we're now going through a period in which with Elul, Hashem's going to be close to us. He's coming out into the field. We just have to reach out to him. We can always reach Hashem, but we have to do the work. Now he's coming to us, like the king is touring the land and willing to talk to his subjects. Now, this is to prepare us for the new year, Rosh Hashanah, the day of decision of the judgment for the next year, and Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. Now, with that context, let us look at that first pasuk again. And it says, I am placing before you Anakim Lefenechem Hayom Bracha B'Klala. And again goes to tell you that the bracha will be from Hashem's commands, which are prescribed in your day. And what will the curse be? Lala im lo tishmu el mitzvahs Hashem Adonachechem Saratzam min nederek hanokim mitzvasa etchem hayom lecheket achrei elokim achrei asher lo yeratam. The curse will come if you do not obey the commandments of Hashem your God. You go astray from the path that I prescribed for you today, following other gods to have worship of a type that you and your fathers never knew, never experienced, because it was only Hashem. Now, what is the bracha? So on an individual basis, there's a good time of year to remember we're supposed to do the mitzvahs. Yeah, we're not supposed to go chasing the things of the world. And there's many explanations of the deeper meaning of this. First of all, I'd like to look at on each of us on an individual basis. And there's ways you can understand it. Where it says, I present before you a blessing and a curse. Now, one way of understanding it, based on a Sifrei to the verse, you're like sitting at a crossroads, and there's two paths you can go. The road branches out. One path seems to be level and clear in the beginning. In the end, what are you going to hit? Web of thorns. Now you got a second path that seems to be choked with thorns in the beginning, but the end was level and clear. then so the person sitting there tells the biped, the person coming along, passerby, the normal is going to look level at the beginning, but after a few steps, it's going to end. It's going to become a tangle of thorns. And the other pass, joke with thorns at the beginning, should know for 2 to 3 steps will be challenging, but the end you will emerge. Now, the Or HaChaim HaKodesh explains what are we talking about? That there's 2 different paths of life we can take. This is very important to remember at this time of year, and all times, particularly this time, that there are 2 paths in life. There means there are 2 types of goodness available. And each one contains blessing and curse. Because the path of the wicked, of the evil ones, is level and stretched in the beginning and thorns at the end. Therefore, that's one kind of goodness contains the blessing and curse for this life. You gotta have a good in this world, but now watch out for the next world. The second one is the way of life that can truly be called a blessing is one you shouldn't worry about the elements of curse, all the things, the challenges, the pain we suffer in this world, all the potential for going off the path, and we can't always understand why we do it. However, if you look at the blessing inherent in serving Hashem, the passage explains, so this way of life, you're going to get ultimately reward in the next world. Now, this is on the individual basis. Now, what about on a deeper basis? Now, just before we get there, we have all these mitzvahs we mention, because all the mitzvahs mentioned in this parsha are helping elevate us to a new level. So we'll get past the thorn, so to speak, and we'll get to that next world. And we'll do it in a way. And these are all fundamental mitzvahs. Now, that's on one level. Now let's look at on a more cosmic level. And this is based primarily on the works of Leshem, and particularly his Sefer, which stands for Parashat Re'eh. Now, just to give you an idea of the Leshem, there is a couple of stories I'd like to share, just give you a level of the Leshem and His Holiness. This is Rav Shlomo Eliashav, the grandfather of the more familiar Eliashav, Zikun Sadik Labraka, who was the Posek Hador. Now, one story about his greatness is there was a man visiting the Chafetz Chaim many years ago, and he left to go to a certain town. Now, the Chafetz Chaim sent his son-in-law to catch up with the man and says, when you get to this village, this town, look up the Leshem, Rav Shlomo Eliashav, because he said, in this world, we'll have the opportunity to be close to him and speak to him. But in this world, none of us, and the Chafetz Chaim was talking about himself also, he will be at such a level that he will be very difficult or impossible to approach in Olam Haba. And that's one story. Another story, this is apropos to this week's parsha. He, in his last 2.5 years, he managed to make it to what was then Palestine, the British Mandate. And he, in Lithuania, and he was learning with Rav Avraham Kook. And a man heard that Rav Avraham Kook was learning with Leshem and asked if he could be given, if he could go for a bracha And Rav Kook told Leshem what the man was seeking. Leshem said, of course you can have a bracha. He says, what bracha would you like? And the man thought for a minute and said, I would like one bracha for Rukniya spiritual matters, and one for Gashmiut, physical matters, physical needs. And Leshem looked at him and said, I don't understand what you're talking about. And it's the view we should have. For Leshem, it's all one continuum, the physical and the spiritual, because all of the physical should be elevated to spiritual. And not only should it be elevated, it's serving a greater divine purpose. And if you look at the mitzvahs today, they explain that when you do these mitzvahs, you're explained by many, you're releasing, even eating kosher animals and all that stuff, you're releasing sparks of Kedusha to go up to the higher worlds and do a tikkun. Now, to explain this tikkun, I would like to summarize the teaching of the Leshem of Shlomo Eliashib. He, in his book Deah, Sefer Deah, gives a whole explanation of how our universe, our world of Asiya, evolved from the higher worlds. And very briefly, first of all, there was only the Ein Sof, the infinite light of the Ein Sof. From there, there was lights and spiritual vessels. And first of all, it was only Chesed, but then there was also Gevurah. First, which came physically, was the Gevurah, and the spiritual vessels were sent spiritual energies. Chet HaChacham Bina managed to maintain those energies, but the more spiritual spheros, Chesed through Malkut, could not, and the energy shattered them, and they were spiritual fragments. And what the whole purpose of the universe has been since then is to do a tikkun, which we started then, tikkun meaning an improvement, a repair, a fixing. And what happened with those tikkunim? We are all part of that. And this is, I believe, if you look at the whole evolution of how he develops it down to a world of Asiya in Rav Shlomo Eliashib, you see that every single step we take in Torah and mitzvahs helps bring the world to tikkun, to perfection, and an ultimate tikkun will start with the Mizman of Mashiach and Tekiyat Meitim, and we'll go on from there. Now, why was this system set up? This is talking about the blessing. Shem just could have made the world, said, I'm going to let it last for 5,000, so 6,000 years, then I'm going to create perfection. He did not want that. He had a dual purpose. He wanted to, and both Leshem and the Ramchal explain this, because he wanted us to be true partners with him so that we could get more reward and share in what he wanted out of his kindness. And every time we do these mitzvahs, we're doing that tikkun. We're elevating the universe. And we've constructed a lot of the way what we need for the tikkun. May this year, remainder of this year, and next year, may we finish the tikkun, elevate the universe with all these mitzvahs and the holy sparks they bring out to a point where we are finally merit the redemption. I want to wish everybody good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom. And since before my next Dvar Torah, I'd like to wish everybody Chodesh Tov.